Shirazi is the director and founder of Islamic Oasis. He holds a master's degree in disaster management as well as a master's degree in political science, and he's currently working towards completing his master's in Sharia. He has years of first-hand experience doing relief work in multiple different Muslim countries around the Muslim world. Shaykh Shirazi is well known in and around the Chicagoland area, delivering lectures, khutbah, and other talks at conferences and whatnot. He's also the host of the weekly Islamic Oasis live talk on YouTube. Without further ado, Shaykh Muhammad Shirazi, to the podium.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. As always, we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his tawfiq. We ask Allah azza wa jal protect and unite the sunnah. And we bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is the last and the final messenger of Allah azza wa jal. As to what to come, the topic that was given to me is what is happening or what is going to happen regarding Iran and Lebanon. Now, you know, brothers and sisters, foreign policy is a very interesting science by itself, because it takes you're doing a lot of thinking regarding what, especially amongst powers that be superpowers, regional countries, sometimes even a lot related to domestic policies also. What happens overseas, if a country that is involved in so many areas, obviously it affects what happens also within the country. So when we are thinking of foreign policy, it's important to have certain principles, let's say, or at least some frameworks in mind in what's actually happening in the world. One thing that we are very clear is that the world is dominated by capitalism and nation states, meaning that there is no more empires. Let's say, although I do understand many people when we think of the United States, we think of it as an empire. And some may actually say, no, it is, because how easy access is created for the United States anywhere they go. Those who carry, let's say, US passports. For you, almost, I can tell you, most of the world, you can go without a visa. You don't even have to ask for a visa. You go on the airport, you pay $100, maybe $50. They will gladly take your $100 and give you a visa. Imagine somebody from the Muslim lands. You have to wait, get visa, wait a day, 2 days, weeks, 2 weeks. I know people who've been trying to get to Turkey just from Somalia and can't get there. They've tried 1,000 times and they just stop. Right? So that means that the nation state infrastructure, it only hurt us as Muslims and those who are the products, not the victims of the new infrastructure that you see in the Muslim lands, and to be honest, everywhere in the world. Right? We also know that after World War I, the British, they created an infrastructure after 1914, let's say, what we are seeing, the results of what we're actually seeing today with Palestine, what we're seeing with what's happening with so-called Israel, the 5 nation states that were built after 43, 48, 47, 67, 73, 62. These are dates that, there was no such thing as Sudan. Sudan is created, Egypt is divided in 2, then you have Syria or Sham in general divided in 5 different countries. So every superpower that came in the region, it kind of designed it according to their own interests. And that's exactly what we're seeing also in the United States after World War II. We are seeing that, I think since World War II, we have at least 25 extra states. Balkans are a whole different ballgame. And we saw what happened maybe in the 90s, when we looked at what they did with Eastern Europe, for instance, right? Balkanization, with Kosovo, with Montenegro, the whole Yugoslavia was basically divided and cut off. The idea of removal of Soviet Union from the region, and also what we're seeing today, also still with Europe, because when you look at Bosnia and you look at Serbia and you look at these areas, tensions are very high, to the point that you never know there could be a war that could break out in the heart of Europe. And so the point is that I'm going to look up a little bit here, just to kind of give you. So when we think about the Muslim lands, especially the topic that's been given to me, which is Iran and Lebanon. Anyone know when Lebanon was actually created? Can you imagine we have to actually talk about these things? Meaning how these things were created. Right? None of these states are original. There's no such thing. Nothing what you see on the map, literally, is not what it was 100 years ago, for instance. Literally. Right? There's no such thing as Saudi Arabia, created in 1922. Egypt, Sudan, there was no. Can you imagine a straight line like this? I mean, that's funny, but literally, boom. Somebody puts it together, and that was formed in 1962, right? 1962, Sudan comes together. And then now you have South Sudan. South Sudan was when? You guys remember? Just happened maybe 10, 15 years ago. It didn't happen too long ago, right? South Sudan was created literally 2004, 5. And then now you have this Sudan is going to be cut in two pieces, East and West Sudan. That's the whole war right now in Sudan. So you're going to have another line that probably just goes straight, boom, right? Libya is already there. This is old map. So Libya is already divided in two. One is being run by the British, one is being run by the Americans. Those two sides, this happened after the killing of Gaddafi. And then you have this Sahara. You guys, you know where Sahel is? When I say Sahel in Africa, anyone know what Sahel looks like? So you should know, because there's a lot going on in that area, right? So Sahel, it begins here, and then a little bit actually Burkina Faso. So a little bit, yeah, here. So this goes in this area like this. Nigeria, all of this, Mali, up to almost Morocco. This is known as Sahel. And in the last literally 1 year, there has been at least 5 coup d'etats, right? There's been Nigeria sees a coup d'etat almost twice a year. Mali, it's almost 2 or 3 times a year. By the way, anyone know Mali, what it means? Mali, what do you think it means? Mali, what's Mali? Money. Mali means my money. Right? That's what in Arabic we say li, me, Mali. So Mali, it's a country full of money. It's so much money that you cannot imagine. That's one of the reasons it was called Mali anyway. And that's where Musa comes from, right? He took all this gold and he was going around Africa and creating inflation all over the place because no other currency had anything left. So, but today Mali is on probably like what, 179th on the poverty rate. Yeah, that should happen. That's good. I think he understood the point. You have the richest country. It hurts, bro. Me too. I was there in Mali. I've been to Mali. I know what Mali looks like. And you look at, literally every 2 miles, there's mines in Mali where people actually go. You'll find kids there who are actually, they have these filtration things. What do you call those things? That you can take dirt and filter. Huh? Tanks, right? With filtering processes. So you actually find gold. So you find kids who are standing in, that movie, it was a famous movie, Blood Diamond. That stuff is true. Except it's just no Bollywood around it or Hollywood around it. That stuff is very true. I've seen it with my eyes. Right? People are, kids, women, elderly are sitting and digging like this, and then they get all this gold. And and I'm coming to the topic, but I just want to let you know how the world is working, what has happened in the last 100 years. So Mali, what's funny is so Senegal, this is Senegal, right? Right here is Senegal. So I went all the way, I couldn't go north, they told me they'll kill me, so I said I won't go there. Then I went to Senegal, and I was literally standing like this. You know, they had a pole. The only thing that differentiates between Senegal and Mali is a pole. There's only a pole. On the pole it says Senegal, Mali. So I was standing like this making fun, saying, oh, Senegal, hello, Mali, hello, Senegal. Hello. You know, the Italians or the French, they just one day came and they said, okay, you know what, we're just gonna draw a line. And when they did this, you have a lot of families that live, some of them who actually live in Mali and some of them that live in Senegal, and all of a sudden the families were just split. Just split. Like, what do we do? All of a sudden I need a visa to come and see you. You're like right there. So the whole Muslim lands, you know, when you look at these darn, it's so frustrating sometimes that, you know, what has happened to us. There's a statement, there's a very good book, it's called Peace to End All Peace. If you like to read books, that's one of them you should read. There's a statement in there that says, I've never seen a people, it's one of the Turkish or the British lieutenants, I think he was. He said, I've never seen a people who have lost so much in such a little time. And in 100 years, we lost control of the whole world. Right? And we were literally controlling the world. Africa is Muslim. Africa is Muslim. There's no question about it. There's no place in Africa that you will not find Muslim. Right? I can dress like this and walk all over Africa. Nobody will come and not know that I'm not Muslim. They will not even bother you. I can pray, I can eat, halal is everywhere. They know you're Muslim. All of Africa is like that. Now, so every region of the world has been put together by a very strategic setup. Let's call that, right? A framework that we're talking about here, the frameworks. Every area, whether you look at, and now it was done differently by different powers. That's France, you know, of course, when we look at Africa, a lot of it was France, the Italians, the British, and now the Americans. So, in the last 1 year, the last year, is seeing a whole different restructuring in the Middle East. Gaza, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroy the enemies, destroy and give not only Gaza but all of Palestine back to the Muslim lands. We are seeing complete ethnic cleansing, annihilation of Gaza, which will be basically to extend Israel, a country that did not exist 50 years ago. Right? How many years has it been? 75 years, sorry, 80 years ago. Did not exist. Nobody knows. Nobody would have known 8 years ago Israel said what? You would not know what that means. But now all of a sudden it's there. So it came around 80 years ago. That's how old this country is. So it's an invention in the heart of the Muslim lands. So now you have this, yeah, we just now have to call it Israel. So unfortunately, it is there, it exists. You have Jordan, which is going to change very soon. As you know, that Jordan may not be under the Hashemite family. It seems that the population that exists in the West Bank today, that population has to go somewhere. You're talking about 6 million Muslims. We know very clearly Israel does not want that population there. Because Israel is worried that, look, even if they get a state of Israel today, in the way extended, proper, consolidated state, final entity, the way they want it to look like, right? Because that's what the war is right now is about. It's about how far Israel can extend its borders to get a final establishment on the map, a complete Zionist Jewish state. That's what the war is about right now, right? Because as far as stopping the war, look, even Hamas had agreed at 67 borders, right? 67 borders was something that was agreed upon by many sides. They had all But Netanyahu is saying, no, there is no such thing. For him, there is no such thing as Palestine. Because he's saying we want all of it. We're not going to fight this war, lose. They've also lost close to 7,000 soldiers, right? It's a huge number. They have a number they're not saying. But, so Gaza, as you know, 2 days ago there was a conference next to Gaza, right? Do you remember? I don't know if you know, 2 days ago, literally, there was a conference done. All the settlers have come next to Gaza. There's an area called Asqalan there. They've done a conference. The Minister of Defense, I think, he was there. And they're basically saying that, look, we're going to put all the settlers there. Although at this point, Gaza has been destroyed so bad, it's uninhabitable. There's no way that anybody can live there right now. They would have to do a lot of work to get the settlers in. But they're telling us straight up that, look, this area is going to be empty till Khan Yunis, and this will be completely filled by settlers. So what you're doing is extending Israel. So you have a whole infrastructure rebuild that's going on. But, sorry. Move the mouse. You gotta keep doing this. So, that's one thing. So now you have this area of population. So keep that in mind. And now let's go to Lebanon for a second. Lebanon was formed when? When did this state come about? You know, you guys, this is university. 1920s? No.
When I got independence?
Okay, yeah, 2020. Yes, that's true. 1943 is when it actually became what we know as Lebanon today. That's true. About 1919, that's true. So, what's happening in Lebanon now as we speak? What's happening in Lebanon as we speak? There's bombing going on, right? There's bombing going on. But remember, there was a war. There was what happened in Lebanon also before the bombings and all this. Who are the major players? You have Hezbollah. You have the Lebanese government. You have, Lebanon does have an army. Those guys, they just look like soldiers, right? So you do have them. That's all they do is sit around looking like soldiers. But they're there. Those guys with red hats that we've seen up and down. But Lebanon has gone through hell in the last 50 years, 70 years, since its formation, right? At one point, 50s, used to be known as Paris of the Arab world. That's what they used to call it. It was so whatever, right? But Lebanon has basically, this was part of the Ottomani Khilafah. Later on, the French mandate created Lebanon. The British mandate created what we're seeing today in Palestine. Lebanon originally was created by the French. Time passed by, people didn't really like the way French were dealing with situations, so they went with the British plan. British came in and they kind of did what they did in Britain or in Lebanon. But what they did was they said, okay, look, there's a lot of different ethnicities and backgrounds and religious groups there. Ottomani Khilafah was able to deal with this without any problems. But when the British came, French couldn't really build things properly. The Druze and some of the others, they went with the British plan. Then they said, okay, yeah, we accept the British plan. The British plan came in. So what they did is they said they gave percentages depending on the population that was there in the region. That's the kind of power you'll have in the government, for instance. So Druze had, okay, you would have your commander-in-chief, head of, let's say one of the head of the armies would be a guy from Druze. One guy would be from the Maronite Christian. One guy would be from Sunni Arabs, right? And then the Shia and this and that. So they kind of created this whole thing and they said that's how it's going to run. So for a while it did run. Then, remember that was 43. So 44, 45, 46, 47, 48. What happens in 48? What happens? What happened in 1948? Famous. Israel is created. The Nakba happens. The Nakba happens, how many people are moving from now, all of a sudden, from Palestine? How many? 700,000. Almost 1 million people are now moving to Lebanon. Where did they all go? They had to go to Lebanon. So 48 happens, you have almost the influx of 1 million, and for us it's not a big deal, but for them they were looking at, look, this changes the whole dynamics of the country. Because when you have the whole government is set up in a certain way, according to populations, the government is running. So now all of a sudden you have 1 million people coming in 48, 49. Then what happens? Right? 67 happens. That brings in another 2, 3 million, to the point that Lebanon has now how many refugees? Those are 6 million, right? And those refugee camps became permanent, right? I know a thing or two about refugee camps. Whenever you set up a settlements like this, you know that's never, like, you know, today in Bangladesh, we have in Balukali and Cox's Bazar, and there's a huge, 2-3 million people who are camping there, they came out of Burma. You know, we're not allowed to build a masjid there. We always have to build permanent masajid. We build them, but we build them permanent. And they said we cannot build permanent. Why? These populations are going to go back. And I always tell them, look, we know the story. They're not going back. They're here and they're here permanent. But the government wants to keep making money over NGOs, so they keep building. They know these things are going to fall apart in 2-3 years, and then you build new. And anytime you build, you have to also put some money in the pockets of these government people. So this is the way they have put together this is another way of making money over refugees. Now, 6 million extra, 4 to 6 million people came into Lebanon. Lebanon goes through hell. Why? Because as so many populations of Sunni Muslims especially came in, that changed the whole dynamics of the country, especially if you're running it according to percentages. So now all of a sudden, the Sunni Muslims or the Arab in the area were saying, yo, man, you're looking at, we are now double, triple. People who were living there at that point were not liking this. The setup was changing, right? And then there were some tit for tat things were happening. So-and-so was being assassinated, so-and-so was assassinated. And all of a sudden, these small assassinations turned into one big assassination, which turned the whole thing into a civil war, all-out war. And it went on it was vicious. It was one of the most bloody civil war things, right? And it's so complicated. The Americans are involved. Of course, the Soviet Union is involved. The Israelis are involved, right? So when did Israel invade Gaza? Lebanon, in that time? 78, right? They came in 73, actually, yeah, they came in 78, they left in the 90s. But they come into this area. Why? Because those Muslims from Palestine who had gone to Lebanon were now doing hit and run inside Israel, right? They would go, like what we're seeing in south of Lebanon today, right? They would go and hit and they would come back. They would go hit and they would come back. They would hit and come back. So Israel said, hell with all of this, right? They were like, okay, we're going to take care of this. They came and invaded the country. Okay. Now, but none of this is happening without somebody is okaying what's going to happen. Okay, so now that's Lebanon. So Lebanon was going through this mess since then until the war stops. Stops when? Early 90s, right? Some of us maybe even remember when the Israeli troops started pulling out of, final troops were pulling out of Lebanon. Then, what's another event that's all of you should remember that happens before Gaza? Before October 7th. The Arab Spring. The Arab Spring takes off. What happens in Syria? Revolution in Syria. Millions of people are now being uprooted. Right? You're talking about close to 2, maybe 3 million. 1 million were dead. Shuhada, about 1,500,000, if not actually more than that, are orphaned, and so many numbers are beyond belief. So, and I've seen the whole civil war from almost day one to the end. Now, with this civil war in Syria, all of the Syrian situation, meaning all of the refugees from Syria, where were they going? They're also going to Lebanon, right? So Lebanon is never, can't see a deal of stability. Everybody's going in, out. If not, it's not the Syrian refugees, it's Palestinian refugees, if not this refugees, if that refugees. So the whole country is kind of just going through this mess, because whenever the Western countries want to create a mess, they always have something called host country. What do you think that means? Escape. There's escape country, right? So for Pakistan, for Kashmir, there's always that Pakistan. For Syria, there was all that Lebanon and Turkey. For Gaza, there's supposed to be Egypt, right? But the idea is not to have anything in Egypt. The idea is to just finish the people off, just cleanse them. So that's one thing. That's all Lebanon now. Okay. When the Israelis, when they invaded Lebanon, right, there was a movement there that was fighting back. That was known at that time, the famous movement at that time, like we have Hezbollah today. At that time there was Amal, right? Maybe you know who these guys were. That Amal turned into what's known as Hezbollah today, right? But Hezbollah came into existence after the Israeli invasion of Lebanon, okay, to fight that invasion. So those guys, what they do, that's why they're in southern Lebanon, right? South of Lebanon, because they're next to each other, the borders are there. So they formed this whole movement, resistance movement, to fight. So that's where Hezbollah comes from. So you kind of know when all these new groups and things are happening in the region. So now let's leave Lebanon here for a moment. Where is Lebanon in this area, right? So now you have Iran. When does Iran as Iran come together? Give me a famous event of Iran. What do you guys know? That you can say, you kind of, yeah, Iran became famous due to this. What? Iranian Revolution. Right? Iranian Revolution happens in 1979. 1979, the Iranian Revolution happens. Who do they overthrow? The Shah. Right? The Shah is there. Shah was supported a lot by the Americans in the beginning. But later on, Shah did change his mind because, you know, Iran is a 3,000 or 4,000-year-old country. It's not like something just came around. It is a very powerful country, by the way. Some of the best engineers actually come out of Iran too. One of the things, you know, they've been able to build a nuclear weapon now. It's a nuclear country. Iran is a nuclear country. There's no more, don't even think about whether it is or not. This morning I was listening to the VP, Vice President, he was here giving some talk somewhere. So he was on live and they were asking him, he was basically giving me an interview saying that, look, yeah, when you say a country is at 60% uranium enrichment level, which means you can actually we can create the bomb any moment we want. Which means he's saying we already have the bomb. Okay, so Iran is a powerful country. It has a lot of resources. It has a huge history. It has a huge Islamic history and history before that, right? So Iran has to be dealt with a certain way. Now, the thing what happened is when Shah came, Shah was throwing around certain things. The Americans were saying, yo, we got to deal with this guy. We were working with him. We kind of gave him some weapons, but there's a lot of opposition against this guy inside. We got to deal with him. Who comes after Shah to Iran? Khomeini, right? Khomeini, the clerics, they call him. So the only people that they could find to work with the Americans, they knew that clerics do have a huge support inside the country. So they start funding the clerics, and then hence you have the whole Iranian Revolution, and then you get the whole country of what we call Iran today, right? By the Khomeini, right? The Khomeini is on the top, and then you have what do you call those guys? Walayat al-Faqih. There's a whole infrastructure that's created, and that's what we have Iran today. But Iran, unfortunately, never became part, by design, never really became part of what is known as the Arab world. Right? It kind of always gave that, or you know, either we're not part of this or we're not part of this. But of course, all of that it's wrong. Because you know, if you deal with, you know, I was in Iran 10 years. I lived in Iran, 8 years. I lived in Iran 8 years. And I'm Sunni. You know, my dad lived there 10 years. So we know the culture there. So the kind of things that we hear about this whole Shia Sunni issues and we kill each other and all that, look, living in a country is different than hearing things, right? The people are they're bright people. They know their history. They're very connected to Islam. Fine, Shia Islam, but still they're connected to that. They have as much love for Masjid al-Aqsa and Palestine as much as you and I do, right? It's not like they're, and believe me, they hate the government as much as you do. As much as we hate our hukam, our rulers, you'll find the same thing till today. in the Iran, also within Iran, the people have seen through all of these clerics. They've seen through all of this nonsense what these governments have done to them, right? And to the point, there's a book by Ali Shariati, if you get a chance, read it. It's an amazing book. It's also translated in English. It's called Marana. Talks about, it was in Arabic, then Persian, then he wrote it in English. And he talks about, it's amazing. He's known as the Sayyid Qutb of Iran. And if you read Sayyid Qutb and if you read Ali Shariati or if you read Abu Ala Maududi, you would never find any difference how they wrote these books. Right? They knew the role of Islam, the role of Sharia, what they want to do, the vision that they had. It's amazing stuff. So the Americans are studying all of these things. They know how we the Muslims think. At the end of the day, it's a population they have to deal with. The other thing, also keep something in mind. Although the Americans, most of the oil comes from where now? To US. From where? Today's oil, where does it come from? No. Where do they get most of their oil from? No. No. Russians know for sure. Where?
Saudi Arabia.
No. They don't need oil from anywhere. If you actually look at the numbers today, Americans are actually very self-sufficient. They don't need oil from anywhere now. Okay? And that's the whole thing about fracking and all that, it's going on that where should we dig or should we not dig in Texas, in the South, and that. They have a lot of oil, and they have a lot of oil in Alaska too. Huge. They don't need Middle East. But why are they in the Middle East? If you don't need the energy. Come on, talk, people. Say something. You're here thinking class. Look, I teach all the time. I'm always teaching. So you can't be like deaf, dumb, and blind. Huh?
Control the flow of oil to the other nations, so you can control the industry of the other nations. And the economy
That's true.
of the other nations.
See, the thing is this, what he's saying, which is, look, fine, we don't need the oil, but nobody else can have it either. Because it's a powerful resource. Others are dependent. Turks are dependent. Russians are maybe. There's a lot of countries around that need that oil. China needs that oil.
The whole Ukraine war and the Russian war, you saw the dependence of the Europeans on the
Yes.
war of Russia.
Right? And Germany was almost knocked out. Like, what's going on, man? People were actually lines. First time we actually saw lines for gas. People were, I have a brother that was calling me, he said, bro, I've been standing in line to make sure I have enough, oil or gas because it was going crazy. They didn't know what's going to happen, especially in the beginning. Now they're maintaining it through UAE. But the point is that, yes, the US is not dependent as much as it was dependent on oil in the beginning. But now, the second thing also is because, of course, the Middle East is also realizing that, look, now the technology, there's so much technology out there. They know that in the next coming years, it's not going to be oil. Right? There's new technology, cars are becoming more electric and this and that. So they will not make as much money as they were making with oil. They know that. That's why the Saudis, for instance, try to create what's the known, what is that called, the new city? The failed misery? Huh? Neom, is it called? Neom, right? The whole thing failed, right? Collapsed. The whole thing collapsed. The guy spent millions, billions. He had a whole billion-dollar plan and what they were going to do. Basically, what he was trying to do is to get UAE. He wanted, instead of people going to UAE, get a trip, all these tourists to come to that area, but the whole thing collapsed. Right? Because, they're saying oil may not be the issue, tourism has to be this and that and the other. So, the thing is that the region is so full of resources that anybody that has access to this thing is literally in control. And number two, one thing is oil. Number two is human capital. It's huge. Do you know, if you think about Iran here, let's say for a moment, this area here, okay, in how many nuclear powers are in this area? Can somebody, any idea? 5. What are they? Pakistan, India, Iran now, yes. China, North Korea. What else? Russia, right? And now, also Israel. So you can't just get up and leave the area.
You're talking about 5, 6 nuclear powers in the region. You're talking about some of the most youngest population in the world. You're talking about the largest population in the world and largest per capita spending. And you're talking about, because when you look at those numbers, are so huge, you cannot just get up and leave the region. Doesn't matter if you don't want the oil or not. So you're talking about a lot happening in that area. And so now I'll add something else. Who knows Henry Kissinger? My God, what happened to this university? You don't know Henry Kissinger? How about Brzezinski? God have mercy. Okay, well, okay. Henry Kissinger is a well-known, he's a thinker, diplomat, foreign expert in foreign policy. Read his books. This guy played in almost every single administration there is in the United States. It's time for Nixon. Anyway, he said, look, here, listen to me. Stop talking, listen to me for a second. Listen. I mean, you called me here to talk, listen to me. So here's the deal. This guy said the problem here is not just that this country, this area is full of young people who have a lot of energy, resources, 5 nuclear weapon countries, so much spending power. And Henry Kissinger said there's a bigger problem here. What do you think he said? Just give me an idea. Any idea? In his words, they're all Muslim. That's exactly what he said. And I can send that. It's a whole talk he gave in Harvard. He was giving a talk, he said, this is not just an American problem. This is the problem we face. Russia has that problem. India has that problem. Americans have that problem. China has that problem. The problem is, not only this is such a huge area with so many resources, so many strategic landscapes, waterways, but the problem is it's a large, young Muslim population. What do you do with these people? And he said, look, you're gonna have to deal with it. And this is what the issue is. Now you have, the US has figured something out too. They said, okay, look, man, this area, we have to stabilize it. If we make it grow any more crazier than it is already, because as I said to you guys, civil war, the Israeli intervention in the region, in Lebanon, created Hezbollah. The American intervention in Saudi Arabia, do you remember the Gulf War, the second Gulf War? The first time ever, American soldiers entered the land of Mecca and Medina. This was a no-no, unacceptable. You can't have, kuffar, soldiers. And they know that. All of the ulama in the region know that. The hukam, they know that. They have to figure this out. They said, what do we do? This is going to create hell. That entrance of the Americans, close to almost 100,000 American soldiers, and of course, some scholars, they gave they give the fatwa for that. But that created what we also know as al-Qaeda. Because people were pissed, they knew. Now, if you're listening to the news across this area, yesterday there was a talk that was given by the CIA, the head of the CIA. Who's the head of the CIA now? Yo, who's the head of the CIA? He is? No, he's not. So, who is? That's why we are in the situation we are in. Imagine these are the guys on a daily basis plan what's going to happen to us on a daily basis. Daily basis. What you eat, what you drink, what you are wearing, what our parents have gone through, what they are going through, why you are even here, at one point was actually decided by many CIA officers. Our country is the way that you see today. It's not just because somebody just thought you got lucky. You didn't get lucky. So you need to know who these people are. Right? If you don't know who these people are, these are people planning against you day and night. Anyway, Burns, right? This guy, his name is Burns. One before that was who? Anyway, he gives a talk. And it's a 1 hour talk. And then he says that, look, we have to there's what they call shuttle diplomacy that's taking place. For instance, Bilkin, his head of the State Department, for instance, he's there going back to Israel, then going back to Egypt, and going to Jordan, then going to Saudi, and going to here, going crazy, trying to figure out how we're going to manage this region before it goes into all out chaos. So they got to figure out a plan. They need a plan. And they know that the Muslims are not happy. Again, in his words, the Muslims are not happy. And then on the top of that, we're dealing with 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They know that. And one of the things, look, Israel did this. The reasons why they're just killing families at a time is they know that very well. And this is the famous prince. What was the Machiavellian idea, right? That you don't just go and kill one or two people from somebody's family and think you're going to be safe. You got to kill the whole thing. You know that they're going to come after us. So that's why they're just, the whole idea of mowing the lawn, right? Just finish them all. Don't leave anybody alive. So what they did, they just killed them all. Like what they're doing in northern Gaza right now. Just finish them, just starve them to death. People haven't had water for 15, 16 days now because they're trying to get the people, 700,000 people in northern Gaza to get basically moved from there and come to Khan Yunis. And people are saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to move. Do whatever it is that you want to do. So they're just mowing the lawn. They're saying, finish them all, kill them. The new generals, right? What is they calling it today? Yesterday they called it a new name. The general's plan. Have you heard it? It's now becoming common today all over the news. The general's plan. The general's plan. The general's plan is what? This came out yesterday. We're just gonna we either finish you all or you get up and leave. There's no other choice. There's no third option. So they know that all of this is going to end up somewhere, and it's not looking good. So what do? America still at some time it has to deal with China, it has to deal with Europe, and it has to also deal with Russia. They need to stabilize the place. How do you do it? I'm gonna say one more idea, and I'm gonna end this thing, so you can ask questions. Look, there's a very famous study that was done in the University of Chicago. And I forgot the name of the book. When I was doing my master's, I remember. The study says this. It says, look, when the African Americans were in this country, right? So for some reason, I mentioned that in this book, but they didn't like it. I don't know. So here, I don't know if maybe some of you guys might remember that, but listen to this very carefully, okay? So the lady, the author goes, when you have a huge population and you cut them off from all resources, okay, you cut them off from all resources, you know that there's going to be a rebellion. It's a natural thing. You cannot do that. You know that there's going to be a rebellion because you're talking about cutting people off, giving them no resources. So people have nothing to live for anyway. So she says this is what you do. And the British were very good at doing this. So what you do is you say, okay, look, we can't give all of these people resources because we know they're too sharp, they're too strong, and they're a very stubborn population. These guys can do a lot of damage. But we control the population. How do we do that? Let's pick some people from the population, give them some resources. Give them some resources. So what happens is that it looks like we're actually offering them resources. So then allow some of them to go to this university, allow some of them to have some jobs, allow some of them, give them resources, give them access. Before no access, now some access. So now what happens, if the population, the majority of the population wants to rebel, what do you think, who's going to be the first one to defend, to come to the aid of the masters? The population who had some resources now. Within the blacks, they took some people, gave them some access. And now what happened is that population said, yo, anytime there's a rebellion, that population said, hold on, look, if you rebel, even what they're giving to us, they're not going to give it to us, so you have no choice. You better stop. You better calm down, slow down. This is not right, haram. Right? Die, struggle, live like this. But now even what they're giving now. So this is what the new plan is. They have already picked up, so now what they're doing is that they have this framework in the area. Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Egypt, and Iran. This is a framework that is now going to basically control the region that you know as the Middle East. Control in a sense, they will be some access has been given to them. Stabilize the region. It doesn't look like it's an outsider who's controlling the area, because then that would cause even hell. So what we do, bring people that looks like them, like what they have done anyway for the last 100 years, but now a more specialized, give them some resources, get them to accept Israel. Israel will be, so far it has not been accepted in the region. It's not a natural part of this region, neither culturally, neither in any way, historically. So now let's get it going like this, but this will be protected by these 5 countries, what they're calling it the Security Council of this region. This is not the Security Council that you have in the United Nations, but this is what they have done. And that they're planning the same thing in Africa, and they're planning the same thing. Look, what was NATO? What was NATO? When they created NATO, the idea was NATO was you get some countries, right, to control a certain region. Everybody's happy. They all look like, and then, but it's the soldiers are who? Like in the United Nations, most of the peacekeepers come from where? Bangladesh, Muslim countries. They're the ones that are utilized in the front. They're the ones who die. But who are the commanders? Who are the guys who are the apparatulans?
Superpowers.
It's all superpowers. And then we're just there dying for them. So that's what they're doing. So if there is any issue happens, imagine Egyptian soldiers are coming and now making peace deal between the Israelis and Palestinians or whatever. So this is what they're planning. This whole Iran has actually been given access to what we can nuclear weapon, okay? And it seems like that's kind of has been allowed. And so that's how the whole region is working. When it comes to Lebanon, there will be no more Hezbollah. Hezbollah will be basically, it will become a political party, just like what happened in the past to IRA, it happened to Mahdi army, remember in Iraq, that was run by Muqtada al-Sadr. It was supposed to be an army that was supposed to fight the American invasion. It didn't fight anything, when he was fighting in the beginning, but then that was basically finished off by sending, remember this guy Muqtada al-Sadr went to Iran, got some fatwa, came back and said, we're no longer going to resist the Americans, we're going to become a political party. And that's exactly, I think, what's going to happen to Hezbollah and to even many others. But this doesn't have to be unplanned. Because, I heard yesterday, actually, the day before yesterday also, there's news coming that there's huge split in Hezbollah by itself, and there's even a split in Hamas. Because they're seeing certain things that, no one in the region, especially from these movements, are willing to accept anything that is put on the table now because of what Israel has done, what the Americans have done. So you don't know what will come out of this, but looks like the plan.